For 30 years, the brightest colors in my world existed only behind my eyes. I lived a life in beige and gray, reliable, safe, and muted. I was a good wife, a good mother, a dependable employee. I cooked sensible meals, paid bills on time, and kept a tidy home. But up in the attic, under a sheet thick with the dust of my settled life, was an easel. And some nights, I lie awake and feel the ghost of the woman I was supposed to be, weeping for the vibrant, messy, glorious paintings she never created.
Welcome to Unbroken Women. I'm your host, Susan Bentley. That feeling of a life unlived, it's a quiet ache so many of us know intimately. It's the ghost of the dreams we packed away for later. Today, we're honored to share the story of Clara Rossi from New Orleans, a woman who decided that later had finally arrived and that her ghost deserved a chance to live.
My life in New Orleans had a rhythm, a comfortable, predictable cadence. Mornings smelled of chicory coffee and the damp, sweet air from the garden. I'd kiss my husband, Marco, goodbye as he left for his construction business. He's a good man, practical and steady, the bedrock of our family. For 25 years, my days were spent in a downtown office, managing accounts. The numbers were neat, orderly. They made sense. My world was built on things that made sense. Our two children, Sophia and Leo, were grown and gone, making their own lives. I was proud of them, deeply. I had everything a woman was supposed to want: a long marriage, a stable home, healthy kids. On paper, my life was a success story. Friends would say, "Clara, you have it all." And I would smile and agree, because what else was there to say? But the truth was, I felt like I was curating a museum of a life that wasn't fully mine. In my youth, I was the girl who saw the world in brushstrokes. The bruised purple of a twilight sky, the fiery cadmium of a hibiscus flower. Art school was the dream, but Marco was the reality. He offered security. Love, yes, but a sensible love. So I chose sense. And slowly, year by year, the girl with paint under her fingernails faded, leaving only the woman with the balanced checkbook. The weight wasn't a sudden burden. It was a slow, creeping accumulation, like silt settling at the bottom of a river. It was the weight of unspoken what-ifs. What if I'd gone to art school? What if I'd been braver? It was the pressure of performing contentment for everyone around me, of nodding and smiling so no one would worry. Inside, I felt like I was shrinking. Each year, I took up a little less space. The most vibrant parts of me had been packed away with my oil paints and charcoal pencils. The burden was invisible. Marco would see me staring out the window and ask what was wrong, and I'd just say, "Oh, nothing, just tired." How do you explain to the man you love that the life you built together feels like a beautiful, gilded cage? It wasn't his fault. It was the choice I had made, a choice I reenacted every single day by not choosing differently. The silence where my art should have been was the heaviest thing of all. The whispers started subtly, a crack in the perfect facade. I'd be driving home from work and see the way the late afternoon sun hit the peeling paint of a Creole cottage, and a sharp, painful ache would bloom in my chest. It was a physical longing to mix those colors, that impossible shade of ochre and faded turquoise. I'd feel my fingers twitch, phantom fingers wanting to hold a brush. Or I'd see a young art student in the French Quarter, their face smudged with paint, their expression one of total consuming focus, and I'd feel a jealousy so profound it almost choked me. It was jealousy for their freedom, for their messiness. One afternoon, I was cleaning out a closet and found my old art school portfolio. I untied the ribbon, and the smell of graphite and old paper filled the air. I saw the sketches of a young woman who was fearless, who believed she could create worlds with her hands. I didn't recognize her. And for the first time, I didn't just feel regret. I felt a deep, profound sense of loss, as if I were mourning a stranger who happened to look just like me. The moment that shattered everything came from my daughter, Sophia. She's a beautiful musician, a singer-songwriter with a voice that can break your heart. She called me one evening, her voice flat. She'd been preparing for a huge audition, a chance to get into a prestigious music program. She told me she'd decided not to go. "It's just too competitive, Mom," she said, her voice trying so hard to sound casual. "There are so many people better than me. I think I'm just gonna finish my business degree. Get a stable job. It's the sensible thing to do." And then she delivered the killing blow, completely unaware of the weapon she was wielding. "It's what you did, right? You had your art, but you chose a real career, a family. You made the practical choice." The phone felt cold against my ear. "It's what you did." The words echoed in the hollow space inside me. She wasn't judging me. In her mind, she was honoring me, following my example. And in that moment, I saw my legacy not as one of love and sacrifice, but of fear and compromise. I had created a blueprint for giving up, and my own daughter was now using it to build a smaller life for herself. The quiet despair I had harbored for myself was one thing, but seeing it pass down, seeing my own unlived life become the justification for her to abandon hers, that was an agony I couldn't bear. My sacrifice suddenly didn't feel noble. It felt like a poison. On the phone with Sophia, I said all the right things. "Whatever you think is best, honey, we support you." The lie tasted like ash in my mouth. For weeks after that call, I was in a state of frantic denial. I threw myself into work, organized the pantry, planned a family dinner. I tried to bury the feeling under a mountain of tasks. My internal monologue was a frantic loop of rationalizations. "You have a good life. Don't be ungrateful. It's too late. You're in your 50s. People will think you've lost your mind. Marco will never understand." The fear was a physical presence. It sat on my chest at night, making it hard to breathe. The biggest fear wasn't about what others would think. It was the fear of the canvas itself. What if I tried and I was terrible? What if the dream I'd nurtured in secret for 30 years was just a pathetic fantasy? The girl in the portfolio was talented, but I wasn't her anymore. What if all I had left was the longing, but none of the skill? The known pain of my regret felt, in a strange way, safe. It was familiar. The potential pain of trying and failing, of confirming my own mediocrity for all the world to see, that was a new and terrifying abyss I wasn't sure I could face. For our anniversary, Marco took us on a weekend trip. His big surprise was a visit to the city's art museum. He meant well. He remembered I used to like art. Walking through the quiet, hallowed halls felt like a funeral procession. Each painting was a testament to a life of courage I hadn't lived. And then I saw it. It wasn't even a famous piece. It was a painting by a contemporary female artist, a chaotic swirl of color and texture. It was raw and angry and beautiful and alive. It was everything I felt but had never allowed myself to express. I just stood there, rooted to the spot. And the tears started. Not quiet, gentle tears, but a gut-wrenching, soul-deep sob that came from a place I had kept locked away for decades. It was a howl of grief for the artist I had abandoned, for the years I had lost, for the colors I had forgotten how to mix. Marco rushed to my side, bewildered. "Clara, honey, what is it? Are you ill?" He tried to put his arm around me, but I couldn't be touched. I felt utterly, completely alone, surrounded by all this beauty that felt like an accusation. In that moment, something inside me didn't just crack. It shattered into a million pieces. I knew, with a certainty that was both terrifying and absolute, that I could not go on like this. The woman who had walked into that museum could not be the same one who walked out. The ride home from the museum was silent. The next day, after Marco left for work, I sat at the kitchen table with a cup of cold coffee and made the decision. It wasn't a lightning bolt of inspiration. It was a quiet, desperate, and utterly terrifying act of self-preservation. I was going to take a 6-month leave of absence from my job, using the money I'd quietly saved over the years. And I was going to turn the attic, my dusty graveyard of dreams, into a studio. I wasn't going to ask for permission. I was just going to do it. The decision felt like a betrayal of the stable life Marco and I had built, of the sensible woman everyone knew me to be. It felt selfish and reckless. Part of me was screaming that I was about to set fire to my entire life, but a deeper, quieter voice whispered, "If you don't, you will burn from the inside out." I chose the fire I could see. My first step was into an art supply store. The moment the door chimed behind me, the smell of turpentine and linseed oil hit me, and it was like coming home after a 30-year exile. My heart was pounding. I felt like a teenager doing something illicit. I walked the aisles, running my fingers over tubes of paint, cerulean blue, burnt sienna, cadmium red. It felt sacred. I bought canvases, brushes of every size, jars of medium. The total at the register made me gasp, a fresh wave of guilt washing over me. I paid in cash, as if to hide the evidence. I drove home and smuggled the bags up to the attic like a secret agent. That evening, after Marco was asleep, I crept upstairs. I didn't paint. I just sat on the floor amidst my new supplies, the plastic bags crinkling in the silence. I unscrewed a tube of ultramarine blue and squeezed a tiny bit onto my finger. The color was so intense, so alive. It was the first honest thing I had felt in years. It was terror and exhilaration all mixed together on the tip of my finger. The secret didn't last long. Marco noticed the smell of paint. He found the receipts. The conversation was exactly as bad as I had feared. He wasn't angry, not really. He was just baffled. A leave of absence? Clara, what are you talking about? To do what? To play with paints? He called it my hobby. That word stung more than any insult. It minimized the gaping wound I was trying to heal. He resented the time I spent in the attic, the way dinner was sometimes late, the way my mind was somewhere else. It wasn't just him. I called my kids to tell them, trying to sound confident and excited. Their reaction was a wave of thinly veiled concern that felt like pity. "Are you okay, Mom?" Leo asked. "Is this some kind of midlife crisis?" Sophia was quiet, which was somehow worse. My decision had disrupted the comfortable ecosystem of our family, and they were all trying to gently nudge me back into my designated box. Friends would ask what I was doing with all my free time now, and I'd mumble something about my art, and they would get a polite, confused look on their face. The world I had so carefully constructed was pushing back, its message clear. This is not who you are. Go back to being the person we need you to be. The attic was my sanctuary and my battleground. Some days I'd lose hours, blissfully covered in paint, feeling that old connection hum through my veins. But other days, the blank canvas was a monstrous white void, reflecting all my inadequacy back at me. The voice of doubt was relentless. Who do you think you are? You've wasted 30 years. You have nothing to say. Marco is right. This is just a silly hobby. On those days, the loneliness was a physical weight. I missed the simplicity of my old life, the easy validation of a paycheck and a completed to-do list. The pain of trying and failing felt so much sharper than the dull, familiar ache of regret I had lived with for so long. I would sit on the dusty floor, surrounded by my failed attempts, and wonder if I'd made a catastrophic mistake, if I had traded a quiet prison for a chaotic wilderness with no map. After months of work, I did the bravest thing I could imagine. I entered a few of my best pieces into a local art show. I poured everything I had into it. My money, my time, my fragile, flickering hope. I invited everyone. The night of the opening, I stood by my little section of the wall, my heart hammering against my ribs. Marco and the kids came, looking uncomfortable and out of place. A few people drifted by, gave my paintings a cursory glance, and moved on. The polite silence was deafening. Then I overheard two women nearby, whispering. One said my work was a bit derivative. The other said it looked amateurish. The words were like stones, hitting me one by one. I felt stripped bare, exposed as the fraud I feared I was. I spent the rest of the night hiding in the restroom. When I got home, I went straight to the attic and looked at my work. All I could see were mistakes. The dream had died. They were right. I was a fool. I decided then and there, tomorrow, I would pack it all up, call my old boss, and beg for my quiet, beige life back. The next morning, as I was wrapping my paintings in old sheets to banish them to the back of a closet, my phone rang. It was an unknown number. An elderly man with a gentle, gravelly voice introduced himself as Mr. Abram. He said he was an art dealer who had arrived at the show late last night, just as they were closing. He had seen my work. I braced for more pity or criticism, but he said, "There is something in your painting of the magnolia tree. The emotion is raw. It is honest." He didn't offer to buy it. He didn't tell me I was a genius. He offered me something far more precious. "Your technique," he said kindly, "is not yet as brave as your heart. But the heart is there. That is the part that cannot be taught. Please, do not stop." A dealer, a stranger. He had seen not just the clumsy execution, but the intention behind it. He had seen me. It wasn't a rescue. It was just a tiny spark. But in the total darkness I was in, that tiny spark was enough to light a path forward. Mr. Abram's words became my mantra. Be as brave as your heart. I didn't just go back to the attic. I went back with a new purpose. I enrolled in a life drawing class at the community college, humbled myself enough to learn the basics again. I found a small group of other artists, mostly women my age, who had also come to art late in life. We'd meet for coffee and talk about pigments and frustration and the challenge of carving out a space for yourself in a life already full. They became my tribe. They understood the war I was fighting because they were fighting it too. My work began to change. I stopped trying to paint things that looked pretty and started painting things that felt true. My canvases got bigger, my colors bolder, my brushstrokes more confident. I learned to set boundaries. When Marco complained about the mess, I'd calmly say, "This is my workspace." It wasn't a fight. It was a statement of fact. and slowly he started to see it not as a hobby, but as my work.
One day, I finished a painting and stepped back. And for the first time, I didn't see the flaws. I saw my own voice, clear and strong on the canvas. The real victory wasn't when I finally sold a painting, though I did, and it felt wonderful. The victory was internal. It was the quiet confidence that settled in my bones. I no longer needed anyone's approval to feel valid. I was an artist because I was making art. That was it. The ghost in the attic was gone. I had finally invited her downstairs and given her a place at the table. One evening, I found Sophia in my studio, just looking at my work. She turned to me, her eyes shining, and said, "I think I'm going to reapply to that music program, Mom." That was my masterpiece.
If I could speak to that woman weeping in the art museum, the woman I used to be, I would wrap my arms around her. I would tell her, "I see you. I see your grief and your fear. That ache you feel, my dear, it isn't a weakness. It's your compass. It's pointing you home. Follow it." The greatest masterpiece you will ever create is your own fulfilled life. It's not too late. Pick up the brush, no matter how late the hour.
The courage to pick up the brush, no matter how late the hour. Thank you, Clara Rossi, for showing us the beauty of a life reclaimed. What dream have you put on a shelf? We would be honored to hear about it in the comments below. If Clara's journey moved you, please like and subscribe to Unbroken Women and click here to watch another story of a woman who rewrote her own ending.